All right. It is it's afternoon where you're at. It's still kind of morning here. How you doing, Jeff?
Doing really well, Anthony. Thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm well. Where are you based out of again?
So I travel a lot, but I live in Mesa, Arizona, the Phoenix metropolitan area.
The greater Phoenix metropolitan area. And I've driven across it recently and it is massive.
It is huge, right? I grew up here. I moved away, lived in Utah, raised my family for 30 years, and we've always
Mhm.
intended to come back. And it's not like I didn't visit, but I really didn't appreciate that Phoenix is like the fifth largest city in the nation. Like it's just huge. And I grew
Yeah.
up, it was a small town, right? Like it was a small market. We couldn't have a baseball team or a football team. Like it
Mhm.
was small, bigger than Maui, but small.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's bigger. Detroit's my hometown and it's bigger than Detroit now.
Right? Like
Yeah.
it's insane. Good and bad that comes with it, but it's a big place for sure.
Right on. Well, I think anybody who doesn't know who Dash slash Next Gear Solution slash Core, like, does Next Gear still exist? Do you guys refer to yourself as that, or is it just Core Logic now?
Internally, we are really even struggling amongst ourselves to say what we are. And so
Okay, good. Well, I that makes both of us.
I wouldn't blame anybody for having some confusion. We are aligning completely under core logic. And, I think you'll find as time moves on that next gear solutions comes up less and less, but it's been such a prevalent force in the industry for so long. It's hard for it to just be blacked out,
Yeah.
even
And
internally.
so make the assumption that somebody's been living under a rock for the past 12 years and has no idea who Dash is and who Core Logic is. How would you answer that question?
Well, I would say you haven't been under a rock, but maybe you've only done mold and never used Exactimate, right? Like that's
Mm-hmm.
possible. Or maybe just carpet cleaning, with
Yep.
a little bit of restoration. It wouldn't be uncommon at all for them to not know who we are. But the um, the program itself, I predate when I come from a company called Client Runner, but we had a competitor.
Okay.
We
Yeah.
were Client Runner called Next Gear Solutions, and that was Garrett Gray, who's terrific, by the way. If you haven't met Garrett, he's not hard to meet at any of the
Yep.
trade shows, but he was a consultant. He actually started out as a sales rep for a restoration company where his mom worked, and really clued in quickly that they needed another job like a hole in the head. Like he could sell whatever, but how are they going to do it? And so he really became preoccupied with this idea of efficiency and automating as a young kid back then. Um, Started a consulting career, the software that they would use to crunch numbers for the consulting. And that company was called Shift back in the day. But that was the beginning of Dash, which is our flagship product on the CRM and job management level. And that grew into Next Gear Solutions. Next Gear Solutions was a competitor of Client Runner where I was.
Mm-hmm.
We were both at one time competing for the same VC money, and
Mm-hmm.
we joke that Client Runner lost, but I really feel like I won because I really liked the direction that everything has taken since that time, and I don't think it would have happened the same way without it. But Next Gear Solutions acquired Client Runner. They acquired Mika, Moisture Mapper, Luxor. I'm trying to remember what we'd called uh, mobile claims back in the day. It would have been I can't remember, but
Yep.
it's acquired a few companies and grown a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I think I was the 101st employee in the company. They were
Mm-hmm.
based in Oxford, Mississippi, and when we were acquired by CoreLogic, we had over 700 employees. It grew quite a bit.
Wow. I remember the graphical dispatch board from Client
Right.
Runner. That was always like I'm like, man, don't get rid of Client Runner just for that and that alone. That was great, had great utility that I
I
think we're
s-
still missing in some way, shape, or form in the
I
industry.
still hear that today, and I have a lot of pride in Client Runner and a lot of disappointment that we don't utilize it, but
Yeah,
it is what it is. Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah.
You grow. You know what I like? Drinking beer, but I kind of realized that I can't be a functional adult and have a healthy outlook and be able to run around with my grandkids if I drink too much beer. So
Yep.
sometimes things change. And what's your role at CoreLogic?
So I have been the lead in the inside sales team for the longest time, but as of the first of the year, I'm actually, they call me a senior customer innovation manager is what I do
Okay.
now. Yeah.
And so what does a senior customer innovation manager do?
So my job is to support our currently it can change who I'm assigned in terms of accounts, but right now I'm
Yeah.
assigned a few franchise accounts on the contractor level to support
Okay.
and make sure that their experience is easy and fluid as it can be.
Got it. And how'd you get started? Like, I'll go back to Client Runner. Like, how'd you get started in the industry?
So if you know Client Runner in another industry, I don't know if Titan is the right word because he's not Garrett Gray, but he's certainly been around a long time. Is Scott Severe? He was
Yep.
a national VP over sales at Exactware then,
Mm-hmm.
and he was part of the Client Runner startup, and he was actually a neighbor of mine. I was an insurance agent, and we had another neighbor named Jerry Pinnock, and probably nobody knows Jerry except for the people that do, but he's certainly been less prolific as we've like he's Jeff Earl, except more people know him. But
Yeah.
he and Scott started Client Runner. They thought they were going to put something together, and this is, I don't know, like 2000s, early 2000s.
Uh-huh.
They thought for $10,000. They had another neighbor. We have another neighbor that worked at Novell. They thought they could hobble together some really cool programming for $10,000 or $20,000 and take it to market. And $250,000 into it, they realized they better start selling subscriptions quick, or they wouldn't be able to make it go. So I was brought in on that side of it, and Client Runner was a great product, right? Like really proud of what they did and how they did it. And it was a lot different software. It was a lot more accommodating to, like, if someone did carpet cleaning or scheduling heavy, was a real force with it. Something Garrett did that we did not, and the good or bad of it is we grew really on the individual contractor level. We did have a couple larger accounts, but we didn't go after them as aggressively. And Next Gear Solutions did. They picked up Service Master. They picked up Paul Davis. They failed miserably on a couple of the early implements, and we're going way back, right? Back before everybody necessarily even had a smartphone. But overall, they had gained more momentum by working with contractors, but doing it from larger franchise subscriptions. And so that was probably a big difference in the two companies' growth and trajectory in terms of money to develop and what they developed and how it developed. Pros and cons to both.
Got it. And why do you stay in the industry? Right?
I love it.
Experience.
I feel like I'm on a mission. Like, I don't know, like I feel like I'm part of a family, and I wouldn't know how to leave if I wanted to. And I love our industry. I love the contractors. I just feel like I'm part of what we do. And I'll just need my kids to drop me off in the mountains with a plate of cookies and leave me there if I leave. Like, I don't know what to do. So I love it.
I had my own crisis of faith, and when I exited Premier along those lines, because when you don't think about leaving until the choice is there, and then you're like, wait, what do I really want? Right? What do you take inventory? And where I landed was, I love this industry. Like with everything that I have, it's something that brings me a lot of joy. It's created a lot of opportunity for me and my family. And the thought of not being a part of it anymore just was a no-fly zone for me. So
Yeah.
I totally get that. So changing gears to talk a little bit about Dash. We were, full transparency at Premier Restoration. We were Dash users from like the early days when Dash was on a server in Garrett and Chad's closet,
right,
back in the day. So very well versed in the product. But what would you say makes Dash unique among job management platforms in restoration?
For sure, what makes it unique is its universal application. And I don't mean to also present this as the end all be all, like, so we're the greatest in everything. I think we are the greatest in a lot of areas, but where those areas are is who we integrate with, how universally we are accepted on, right? Like, you don't need to just be program work or not do program work, or if you need special integrations with Exact Analysis or Xactimate, or Symbility as an estimating platform, or the water modules, right? Like Mika, we just have a really, really strong blend of, we're universally known and accepted by people that pay us, like carriers, right? Like, it's a lot easier to transact and get things done on the contractor level. It's a lot easier to get your estimate done, just because at the end of the day, we're trying to touch things one time and be able to have that data and read that data and use that data other places.
So through that lens, who makes a good Dash customer?
Anybody that uses Xactimate or is an insurance build contractor. And when I say Xactimate, I also mean Symbility. CoreLogic owns Symbility, and we don't call it Symbility anymore. Now we're calling it Mobile Claims. But if you are writing an estimate and concerned about getting paid from a carrier, you're a really, really good mix. We have other customers that do, general contracting in other areas, but they also have significant volume in insurance build work. And if they didn't, it's probably not a great fit. If you only did carpet cleaning, if you never needed to use Xactimate, you don't care what a carrier will pay, we love you, but you probably would not love us as much as something different.
And so the inverse question, right? Who do you onboard that reliably just isn't happy? Is it just as simple as, look, if you're in the insurance restoration environment, you're happy? Like, is the polarity that stark, or are there other reasons?
That's a great question. And let me make sure I'm answering the right thing. You're saying who signs up for Dash and doesn't take off with, like,
like who's a bad customer for you? Like, who are the folks that if you're like on a sales call with, despite, your ambitions to say, look, my job is to add customers, right? Those are the ones that you go, look, we're probably a bad mix, and here's who you should be talking to. Who are the ones that you lateral off because you can't fix their problems?
A bad customer, and I wouldn't say bad customer, but maybe I would say it tends to not be as successful of a business, even longer term, is someone where the owner wants to delegate everything. Like, they want somebody else to be in charge of the automation. They see this as like a computer guy's job. And so they want somebody else to learn Dash, and they don't attend the training or participate in the training, would be one reason. Another reason would be they just don't, right? Like, they don't want to learn the system. And it's not that simple. I think our industry is a lot more complex than our product. If someone's an experienced industry professional, then and they're an experienced industry professional that wants to be involved in their books and data,
got it,
then you're great. But if you're not, right, like, if you're new to the industry and you're signing up for Dash because everybody thinks it's great, you're going to struggle. And some of that struggle might be Dash. Most of that struggle would be the industry's tough and there's a lot of moving parts.
I would agree. So of the customers that you see finding success, what areas of the software or specific products are they leveraging to create that success? Like, what are they doing different than the rank and file?
Oddly enough, 20% of our customers still are not integrated with their accounting. And I don't know why you would have Dash and not have it attached to your accounting. If you really want to use the product well for budgeting, for profit and loss, you've got to be connected to the accounting. And I found the customers that are really serious about wanting to have good reports and analytics, like that's where Dash shines. Is you want good usable data, right? I want to be able to see a WIP report. I want to know my work in progress by job details. Like Dash kicks trash there. Like that's like, why would you want something different if that's relevant to you? The reporting is really, really strong.
Yeah. And what do you like, little off script here, but what would you consider to be the top 3 integrations?
That would depend on the customer, right? Because not everybody is doing the same thing. You could be doing content, which would be dramatically different. But generally speaking, it's going to be your estimating platform and your accounting platform. So QuickBooks is a big deal, but it doesn't have to be QuickBooks. It's just easier if it is.
Yep.
It could be on the estimating side. It could be mobile claims, or Symbility is the same thing, or Xactimate. And it has to be, right? Like that's something where like, what if it's not those? Well, then we are the wrong, square peg, round hole. So if you're not using one of those, we probably wouldn't be a good fit. But those are an easy 2 areas of integration that are easy to identify. A third, not necessarily as universal, but still really important, is what we've called Mika, now being called Mitigate.
Yeah.
It's such a common software. If you're doing any preferred vendor work, any program work, you're probably a Mika customer, and our ability to send information back and forth is incredibly useful for any contractor. I'm coming from inside sales, so I want to say independent contractor, but it's not, right? Like I just have to grab my word and say it different because.
And I'll say I did have the pleasure of attending Interconnect this year, and sat through the intro to beta on Mitigate, and after we as an independent mitigation company that we did not actively seek out being on a program. We had a few TPAs that we kept on life support just because, right? Like we're servicing the agents and everything.
I don't blame you a bit. I don't blame you a bit. I get it.
Yeah. But so Mika was one of those applications we would fire up once or twice a month, and every single time it was like, oh, holy crap, here we go again, and now seeing what the team at CoreLogic has done to improve just the usability and workflow from a technician perspective within Mitigate really genuinely made me smile. And I might catch a little bit of shade from my like staunch, like truly independent anti-establishment restorers for saying that, but right is right. And for me, like one of my personal missions is to make sure that technicians in the field have more time that they can use with their discretion, because these are individuals with hearts of gold. They love showing up and being Superman and making a difference in people's days. And if we give them more time, they just make the world a better place. And so if we do that through process innovation on a software platform, I kind of don't care who does it. I'm in for that. I think it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, I would say Mika has gone from being what Hyundai was to what Hyundai is, right? Like there was a time when, Charles Barkley was trying to turn the tide, if you're old enough to remember that Hyundai market.
And as a Motor City boy, that resonates with me more than you could ever imagine.
Yeah. My last car purchase was the Hyundai Santa Cruz. It's like the greatest car I've ever owned. I love it. And if you told me 30 years ago I'd love a Hyundai, I would have thought that was comical.
I like the thought of buying anything that's not one of the big 3 American brands still scares me because the one guy that showed up with his dad's Toyota Camry at high school got his ass kicked in the parking lot.
Right?
I'm like, my wife owns a Subaru, and that, where I'm kind of like, is Grandpa turning over in his grave over this? Because he worked at the dock at the Ipsy plant for Ford Motor Company his entire career, and I'm like, am I like giving my family bad legacy by buying this vehicle? Like, no, of course not. But I can't help but feel that way. So
yeah, the reason we have the car we do now is because my son wrecked our Corolla, our 2005 Corolla, which isn't a Hyundai, but not one of the American 3. That thing had 394,000 miles on it, and all we ever did was change the brakes, tires, and oil. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
And I'm so mad he wrecked it because it was hard to replace. Like, it was too much value, and cars are expensive. But
I hear that. What questions do you have for me? What would you like to learn about me or Pivot?
What does Pivot represent? Like who is drawn to participate with Pivot, and what are they looking for in the relationship? What same questions you asked me. What does the successful Pivot, glad we did it relationship look like, versus if there's ever been a time when it maybe wasn't what somebody was looking for? What would be the split in the demographic, do you think?
Yeah, so Pivot, we're a peer-based consultancy with a focus on analytics. And so we begin every conversation with data, and we let the data tell the story about what's happening in our businesses. Now, this just doesn't, we don't mean to invalidate the way that an owner might feel about the direction of their business, but a lot of the times our feelings can be correct, or we have doubts in them, and the data confirms what we already know. Or sometimes the data tells us we're dead freaking wrong, and the problem isn't here, the problem is somewhere else, and that's our area for improvement. We fundamentally believe that the growth of an organization is wholly dependent on their ability to develop their business systems. And so we've created a method by which we gamified the growth and development of the top 48 business systems we've identified that are relevant to restoration contractors. Now, that being said, Pivot tends to be a very strong environment for independent owners who are looking to grow and scale their business beyond, call it like a head count of around 8, a couple million in annual revenue, right? Like right where the owner is starting to lose the ability to control everything that happens in the field. And when you have to start to become reliant on systems. We don't do very well with like high level entrepreneurial types that want to operate and run on the fly and, make decisions on their own intuition. We do have a few folks in our environment, and they stick around because they know Pivot's a good counterbalance to their intuition. But those tend to be the more disruptive members that we have. And then, because we have a price point that creates a barrier to entry, that kind of roots out some folks who are looking for maybe a consulting option that's a little more budget conscious. And so those tend to be the two reasons. Now, once members are in Pivot, reliably they stay, and they only leave for a handful of reasons. Merger and acquisition has been brutal for a lot of folks. And so, we've a majority of our customer attrition has gone by way of that. But we've just had some folks who, have gotten their business to a position, they may be contemplating selling or something like that, but they feel like they've taken the value that they can from Pivot. But usually those individuals have been around for 3, 4, 5 years. It's very, very uncommon we have somebody wish to exit within the first year or two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll tell you, I have a really shared belief in masterclass, right? Whether it's a coach, whether it's networking. One of the hindsight lessons I stress all the time for my own family is experience is everything. And other people's experience is the best benefit you can give yourself in life. If you have to learn it all on your own, it may work, but man, that's hard. It's way easier to talk to other people that either know what you should do, or at least they've been successful in something you can learn from. So I think that's great. I agree with the entire concept of why you're doing what you're doing. And I think that really blends well, right? Like we have lots of consulting groups that recommend and would promote our products. And there's a couple I've seen out there that maybe I wouldn't think are awesome, and I won't use any names, but they tend to be more of the less concerned about data and more concerned about a gut feel to put a really hard edge onto it. It's never that black and white, but I'll tell you what, I've learned my gut is always right. My instincts are always right, except for when they're not. And that's it could be an expensive lesson to learn. So,
and what one of the things that I've learned in making the transition from, being an operator to now being on the consulting side of the equation is there's a distinct advantage in the fact that I have proximity from your business, meaning that it's not mine. And for some reason, the fact that it's not mine lets me see things so transparently that I otherwise wouldn't see in my own business because it's mine and it's clouded with all the emotions and the management of people and all those other things, right? Restorers by nature, we have big hearts. That's why we find success in doing what we're doing. But we also have big hearts for our employees, and we tend to hang on to people too long, right? And sometimes it's an outside voice coming in and saying, hey, look, the data says this person's screwing you over. Like, look at it. Take a look. And they go, oh my gosh, you're right. Or no way, you're wrong. But either way, they're in a better place as a result of somebody from, a little bit of distance, just looking at things objectively, making that comment.
Agreed. It's related but different, right? Like I have 5 kids. I love all 5. I like 4 of them. The one changes. I sometimes it's all 5, but I've got 3 boys: girl, boy, and my boys have played a lot of baseball. Like we're like one of those, if you know a baseball family, like it's us, and they each played 100 games a year for their life until they didn't. But man, you can learn a lot from looking at stats on a baseball team, like things you would never ever think. And especially if you're emotionally attached to the group, whether it's your own child or just kids that you love because you end up loving them all anyways. It's really, really important to look at the data. And you just learn things you didn't know you would learn. It's pretty amazing. So the numbers are so important, and it's not, some people have a spreadsheet to have a spreadsheet. Not all data is of the same value. How we assemble it, where it's coming from. Like I don't have to sell anybody too hard on it. May or may not be true, and you just want it to be as accurate as you can get it, for sure. But you also don't want to spend your life trying to get it right. Like, that's not our job as a contractor to do reports. The toughest part of our job is what we do to create the data that makes those reports. And so it's so helpful to have somebody else that has the experience or an outside view of what the larger data teaches, or, on an individual level, certainly how can we acquire that information with the least amount of headache and expense.
I agree. Well, awesome. Thanks so much for taking some time to do a quick little Facebook Live with me. Do you have any closing thoughts?
That probably was my closing thought, right? Like,
fair enough.
If I was going to end somewhere, I probably would have said that, but I would just emphasize we do hard things as independent contractors that are billing the insurance company, right? Like it's a desperately needed contribution that we make, but it's hard. Mm-hmm. And you just want to have the best and easiest path possible. It's one thing to be a year older. It's another thing to be a year better. And usually data and process is what makes the difference for sure.
I agree. Well, thanks again for setting aside some time tomorrow to help our pivot members out and walk them through Dash. And, for a lot of them, it'll be an exploration of maybe what's new or what's changed. And for some of them, it can be an opportunity to maybe go from whatever system they're on, or maybe the absence of a system, to something that helps them manage their projects better. So thank you for setting aside the time, and appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thank you. Thanks very much.
See you. Thanks, Jeff. Aloha.
Aloha.